I used to believe marriage was unbreakable if you just held on tight enough. I was wrong. Looking back, I think the first cracks in mine appeared years before the betrayal. Small things, easy to miss. A sigh when she thought I wasn't listening. A night out with her friends that stretched longer than it should have. The way her phone became an extension of her hand. But at the time, I convinced myself it was normal. Every couple has ups and downs, right? Her name was Sarah. We'd been married 12 years. Not perfect years, but ours. We had routines. Sunday mornings with coffee and the newspaper, late-night drives when neither of us could sleep, the little notes she used to leave in my lunchbox. Those memories became my defense when I felt the unease creeping in. They were proof, I thought, that what we had was solid. But love doesn't shatter overnight. It erodes slowly, like stone under water. It was late autumn when the first undeniable shift hit me. She started working late more often, always with the same excuse: deadlines. She came home smelling faintly of wine, though she never drank at her office. And her laugh. I swear I could tell when she'd been laughing with someone else. It wasn't the tired laugh she gave me after a long day. It was lighter, freer, like a woman in love. One night I walked into the kitchen while she was on her phone. She didn't hear me at first. Her voice was soft, almost tender. When she noticed me, she jumped, shoved the phone into her pocket, and gave me a smile that didn't belong to me anymore. "Who was that?" I asked. "Just Emily from work," she replied too quickly. Her eyes flicked away, a tell I'd learned to recognize over the years. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But doubt lodged itself in me like a splinter, festering with every unanswered question. I started noticing more. Her phone, always face down. The way she lingered in the bathroom, whispering into the receiver. Her sudden interest in new clothes, in perfume she hadn't worn in years. I caught glimpses of a woman I no longer recognized, someone slipping away from me, piece by piece. One evening, after she claimed she had a late meeting, I found myself pacing the living room, staring at the clock. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed my jacket, keys, and drove aimlessly until instinct led me downtown. That's when I saw her car parked outside a restaurant. I parked across the street, my chest tight, palms sweating on the steering wheel. Minutes crawled by until I saw her emerge, but she wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, tall, confident, his hand brushing against hers as if it belonged there. They laughed, that same laugh I hadn't heard in months. She looked radiant, not tired, not stressed, alive. I sat there, frozen, every muscle in my body screaming to confront them, to demand answers, to tear apart the illusion. But I couldn't move. My entire world tilted, my stomach churned, and for the first time in my life I felt powerless. When she leaned into him, pressing her hand to his chest as if she'd done it 1,000 times, I felt something inside me fracture. Not break. Not yet. But it was the moment I realized the woman I loved wasn't mine anymore. I drove home in silence, the steering wheel slippery under my trembling hands. My mind played tricks on me, whispering excuses. Maybe he was a colleague. Maybe I'd misunderstood. But deep down, I knew. The truth had come to my doorstep, and there was no locking it out. I tried to hold on to my sanity by convincing myself that what I saw that night was harmless. People hug. Friends hug. Maybe I caught something out of context. That's what I told myself when I couldn't sleep at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling while Sarah's quiet breathing beside me felt like a lie. But reality doesn't wait forever. The cracks started widening. Sarah became harder to reach during the day. Before, she'd text me small things. What she was having for lunch, a funny story about a coworker, a random meme. Now hours would pass before she responded, and when she did, it felt mechanical. Short sentences, no warmth. I tried talking to her. One night, I asked her if everything was okay, if something was bothering her. She smiled too quickly and said, "Of course. You worry too much." But as she leaned over to kiss me, I smelled a perfume on her that wasn't hers. Strong, masculine almost, like cologne clinging faintly to her sweater. My heart hammered, but I swallowed the words. A week later, I couldn't keep quiet. She said she had a work dinner, but I already knew better. My gut was screaming. So I followed her again, telling myself it was the only way to get answers. Her car led me across town to a place I'd never been, a quiet bar tucked away on the edge of the city. The kind of spot that doesn't advertise, doesn't seek attention. Perfect for secrets. I parked across the street, keeping my head low as she got out. And then I saw him, same man as before, waiting by the entrance. She smiled at him in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. That smile cut deeper than any blade could. They went inside, leaving me in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. For 20 minutes, I sat frozen, debating what to do. Storm in there? Confront her in front of him? Or keep sitting in the shadows, swallowing the poison of my own imagination? Finally, I got out. My legs were trembling, but I pushed through the door and stepped inside. The dim bar smelled of whiskey and cigarettes. Music played low in the background. And there she was, sitting across from him in a booth, leaning forward, her hand brushing against his. I felt the air leave my lungs. For a moment I stood there unnoticed, my whole world collapsing in slow motion. Then she looked up, and our eyes met. Her smile vanished. Her face froze when she saw me. The color drained from her cheeks as if she'd been caught stealing, and, in a way, she had. The man across from her turned slowly, sizing me up, confusion in his eyes, at least until Sarah whispered something under her breath that made him look guilty too. I walked toward their booth, every step heavier than the last. The bar was quiet enough that I could hear my own pulse thundering in my ears. My fists clenched, but I wasn't here to fight. I was here to finally see the truth without the blindfold I'd been wearing for too long. "Sarah," I said, my voice rough, almost unrecognizable to myself. "Want to explain what the hell is going on?" She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Her eyes darted to him, then back to me. She looked trapped, cornered. "This is," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't say just a friend. Don't lie to me again." Her silence was the answer I didn't want. The man stood, trying to appear calm. "Look, man, maybe you should—" I snapped my head toward him. "Sit down." My tone was low, but deadly. He hesitated, then obeyed. Good. I didn't need him pretending to be the victim here. My eyes locked on Sarah's again. "How long?" Her lips trembled. She wouldn't look at me. Finally, in the smallest voice, she said, "A few months." That sentence shattered something inside me. Months. While I was making her breakfast before work, while I was saving money to surprise her with a weekend trip, while I was still believing we were building a future, she was giving herself to someone else. The silence between us was suffocating. I could feel the other patrons glancing over, sensing the storm. "You could have just told me," I said, my voice breaking for the first time. "You could have spared me the humiliation. But instead, you made me the fool." Her eyes finally filled with tears. "I didn't want to hurt you." I laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and hollow. "Didn't want to hurt me? Sarah, you burned everything we had. You lied every day. You looked me in the eyes and kissed me after him. Don't you dare say you didn't want to hurt me." The man shifted uncomfortably, but I barely registered him anymore. My entire world had narrowed to her trembling figure in front of me and the wreckage of trust between us. I turned away before I could crumble. My hands were shaking, my chest hollow, but I forced myself to walk out of that bar. Every step felt like I was leaving behind not just her, but the version of myself that once believed in her. The night air hit me like ice. I stood on the sidewalk, gasping, realizing I had no idea what came next. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same. I walked through the city at night with no destination. The streetlights flickered, cars rushed past, but I barely noticed. Inside my head there was nothing but a low hum, like the silence after an explosion. Memories kept flashing in front of me, one after another. Our first kiss in the rain. Her laugh when I burned the frying pan trying to make an omelet. The evenings when we sat together in silence, yet felt like we were everything to each other. And now I realized none of it mattered anymore. All those moments were worthless now. They weren't love, they were camouflage for her betrayal. I stopped by the window of a closed coffee shop and caught my reflection. Red eyes, twisted expression, a stranger staring back at me. That wasn't me, that was someone else. You gave her everything, a voice in my head whispered, and she made you a fool. I could feel the pain shifting. It wasn't leaving, but changing. The tears I'd been holding back dried up, leaving only bitterness and cold. And in their place, something new was forming, something darker. The craving for revenge. She didn't just cheat, I thought. She destroyed trust. She lied to my face for months. And him? Sitting there in my living room like he belonged. Arrogant bastard. The anger boiled in my chest. I'd never thought of myself as vengeful. I was the guy who talked things out, who forgave, who tried to make it work. But now, words were useless. I wanted them to feel the same collapse I did. I wanted their world to fall apart. I pulled out my phone. A bunch of unread messages from my friends popped up. They'd invited me for a drink earlier. I'd said no because I wanted to spend the night with her. Funny. I hovered over her contact, Sarah, thumb pressed against the screen. A small voice whispered, "Delete it. End this chapter. Move on." But the darker voice, sharper, colder, cut in, "No, not yet. She has to feel what it's like to lose everything." I shoved the phone back into my pocket and took a deep breath. It hurt like hell, but in that pain I could feel something new hardening inside me, a different kind of strength. The next few days were going to decide everything. The days that followed felt unreal. I went to work, smiled at people, even laughed at jokes. On the outside, I was the same man I had always been. But inside, I was sharpening a knife made of silence and patience. Sarah kept texting me. Apologies, long messages, half excuses, half confessions. It didn't mean anything. I was lost, confused. "We can fix this, please." I didn't reply. I wanted her to feel the void, to know what silence tastes like when it's coming from the man whose trust you shattered. But my mind wasn't silent. It was moving fast, every detail fitting into place. Revenge wasn't going to be some angry outburst. Number I wanted precision. I wanted her and him to look at each other and feel the same sickness I felt the night I saw them together. One evening I drove past her apartment. Her car was there, his too. Curtains closed, lights dimmed. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard they shook. Part of me wanted to storm in, to drag him out by the throat. But no, that would be too easy for them. Too quick. Pain needs time to sink in. So I started planning. I gathered screenshots, photos, every little piece of evidence. Her late-night texts, the sudden work meetings, the lies. I made sure the truth wasn't just in my head. It was solid, undeniable. And then I thought about the stage. Because betrayal deserves an audience. A week later, we were at a friend's birthday party. Sarah was there, dressed up like nothing had ever happened. She smiled at me nervously, expecting me to ignore her, maybe to yell. But I stayed calm. Too calm. I waited until the room was full, until laughter and music filled the air. Then, without raising my voice, I spoke. "Funny thing about trust," I said, lifting my glass. Everyone turned. Sarah froze. It takes years to build and seconds to destroy. And then I laid it all out. The screenshots, the lies, the man she'd been sneaking around with, standing right there in the room, red-faced, unable to meet my eyes. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Sarah's smile collapsed. She tried to speak, but no words came out. The room was ice. Her friends looked at her differently. She wasn't the woman they thought she was anymore. She wasn't anything. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to break things. The truth was enough. It was heavier than any punch. I set the glass down, turned, and walked out. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight lift off my chest. Not completely. Scars don't vanish overnight. But there was relief in knowing she finally felt even a fraction of the devastation she left me with. And as I stepped into the night, I knew one thing for sure. Sometimes love doesn't end with forgiveness. Sometimes it ends with justice.